That's our motto. We want freedom by any means necessary. We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary.
Malcolm X is remembered across the world as an outspoken advocate for civil rights. But a new book published this week on what would have been his 101st birthday aims to highlight a different side of the revolutionary figure. Malcolm in the Desert, Wisdom from the Spiritual Transformation of Malcolm X, focuses on his religious awakening during his pilgrimage to Mecca. And the author of that book, Dr. Ilyasah Shabazz, joins us now. She is, of course, the daughter of Malcolm X and director of the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Center. Also with us, the host of Politics Nation on MS Now, the Reverend Al Sharpton. He's also the president of the National Action Network. Our thanks to you both for being with us. Dr. Shabazz, congratulations on the book. Thank you for being here. So much has been written about your father. He, of course, famously wrote about himself. Talk to us about why you think this part of him has been less understood and less appreciated until now.
I think now we have the internet. There's so much more information. And we've experienced war. You know, we're seeing the many injustices that he spoke about. And I think the time is just really ripe. The mischaracterizations to see him for who he was at his core.
For those who don't know, remind the viewers about this pilgrimage, when he took it, why he took it, and why it was so meaningful.
Well, you know, it was a very challenging time in his life. He was separating from the Nation of Islam, the organization for which he was the chief spokesperson. And there was just so much turmoil. And I'm grateful that he found himself on a plane. He was away from, you know, again, the mischaracterizations. He was alone with himself. You know, he was a very loving, compassionate, responsible young man, only 39 years old. And I think it's a disservice not to recognize those qualities about him, that it was because of his moral compass that enabled him to do the work that he did.
Yes, I can call you that. We know
Yes.
I think that the book's importance and something I'd like you to discuss is the spiritual base, because, as you know, I came out of the King movement as a king, not the Malcolm movement, but I got to know your mother well. And your mother became a godmother to my daughters, in full disclosure. And she talked about how the core of Malcolm X was always through spiritual and moralized, right, not through nationalist or politicalized. It evolved into that. Talk about that moral center, and that she and Coretta Scott King used to talk about that, about both their husbands, as I remember Mrs. King was there at the hospital a few times when your mother was suffering and led to death. Talk about how that moral thing drove Malcolm and Martin, but you know, in terms of your father.
Right. My father was, you know, very balanced. And again, it was his moral compass that enabled him to speak truth to power, to injustice. He didn't fear man, he feared God. And he was a responsible young man. And he knew if he did not do what was right, you know, in his core, that he would not be a man, as he often said. And so when I think that today I am older than my father ever was, you know, it helps me to look at his those moral values a lot more. And when I made Hajj, it helped me to see that he had an opportunity, you know, to be in this space and seek solutions to the human condition that, you know, that prevents us from coming together. And the fact that he decided to come back to a place where he knew, you know, was, you know, a lot happening and perhaps his life was in danger, that he opted to come back because of that dedication.
And you've done such a marvelous job with the center, where he was killed, you built a center. Talk about how a lot of what I've seen you advise and counsel activists today, younger and older, that spiritual moral base must be the basis, not just grabbing political power.
That's right.
Talk about how you try to translate that through this book and through what your father stood for, because without that, they're kind of like who's got the most power rather than who's standing for what's right.
That's right. You know, Rev, my mother was a very young woman. She lived through her home being firebombed. She was pregnant with twins, had her 4 little girls. And her husband called her and said, Betty, come bring the girls to the Audubon Ballroom. And she walked in, I'm sure, pretty, ready to see her husband, got her little girls all dressed up, only to walk out shattered, having witnessed him being gunned down. And the fact that she turned a place that represented such trauma and tragedy and turned it into a place of triumph, not for herself, not for her husband, but so that the body of work, her husband's body of work, could live and inspire and uplift this next generation, speaks volumes. It's the values that how she raised her 6 girls. It was a bubble of love for us. You know what our childhood was like. And so I think what is most important is being able to center ourselves, to understand why I'm here, what is my identity, what is my purpose, how can I be my best self so that I can see you just as I see myself, filled with love, and address these challenges that exist in the world together. So, there's that African proverb that says, when you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together.
And the importance of community, to be sure. Ilyasah, as someone who picks up this book, what are 1 or 2 maybe lessons or things that you hope they get from it?
Self-love. Being our best selves. I think that we all have the question, who am I? What is my purpose? Why am I here? And we're not here to just make money and get rich and buy, pretty things. We're here to leave the place better than we found it, right? And so I personally feel that, I've done a lot of self-reflection, a lot of work to address the different kinds of challenges I had in my life. And so this kind of curricula is the same kind that I provide for my students. It's the same kind that I, help create at the Shabazz Center, where I'm the board chair. We do, intergenerational leadership courses, the Malcolm X Fellows Program, et cetera, just to make sure that our young people, are finding their way.
The new book, Malcolm in the Desert, Wisdom from the Spiritual Transformation of Malcolm X, is available now. Dr. Ilyasah Shabazz, thank you so much for being with us this morning.